Hello, listeners. How is everyone doing? This is Saima Dillon, and you're listening to Heart with Saima. Um, the show is all about bringing people who can impact lives, and we share stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And my guest today is Ashok, Dr. Ashok Bhattacharya, and a little bit about him. His passion includes understanding people, the sorrows and the joy, the relationship at home and in the workplace. He started Empathy Clinic to provide a solid basis of appreciating the inner experience of the people he's privileged to work with. Empathy helps him with both diagnosis and treatment of his clients. He has a special interest in couples therapy and post-traumatic stress disorder. Both issues provide plenty of practice with empathy. He is also a recording musician and spends a lot of time recording and performing music. To him, music is a form of empathy that does not require a common platform. He looks at empathy from the perspective of the universe as well as the individual. And without waiting anymore, I would like to bring him on. Hello, Ashok. How are you doing?
Hi, Saima. Thanks so much for having me on the show. It's lovely to see you again.
Absolutely, Ashok. You've become a regular guest, and we literally have it scheduled where Ashok and Nancy, who's not here today, but you guys are here, I think, every month, and so it's there's just so much knowledge and so much that you guys have. I don't even look outside of my realm, Ashok. I just feel I myself have so much that I can absorb and so much I can learn from everyone around you and from you and from Nancy. I myself can have become this kind of like this sponge who is just ready to learn and evolve and grow because it helps me learn and it helps me grow into a better person. And hopefully I completed a year since I've been doing my podcast, Ashok, and I went through. Thank you, and I went through this these couple of months where a lot of changes coming into my life. Things are happening, and I kind of myself went a bit underground, and I took this time off. But because sometimes you start also thinking, what you're doing, is it helping people? Because that was the sole purpose of starting the podcast, was to hopefully help others. And I think the most priceless lesson that my podcast has taught me is that when you are needing something in your own life, you start giving it out. And when you start giving it out, it starts coming back to you tenfold.
Saima, I want to say a few things about what you just said, because it was so beautiful and so appropriate to what I'm going to be talking about today, which is essentially empathy. I think if we think of empathy as I'm a sponge and I have to absorb everyone's feelings, you're going to get overwhelmed very, very quickly, and you're going to get fatigue, actually, whether you call it compassion fatigue or empathy fatigue. And the way I look at empathy, it's kind of like looking at somebody else's experience just for that moment in time. You don't have to necessarily wear that experience yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to put yourself in that person's position at all. You just have to appreciate that person's position. So I don't like heights. I hate heights. But I'd love to climb a mountain, and I never will.
Yes.
But I'm quite happy watching somebody else climb a mountain. And that doesn't mean I have to be frightened, because I'm not putting myself in that person's place. I'm watching them do it. So I don't have to sponge it. I just have to understand their experience. And
Yeah.
that's such a fundamental difference when we're talking about empathy, because it's not like at the end of my day, I work 9 hours a day. And then people might say, you have to listen, you have to absorb all that energy from people who might be sad or distressed. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, some of that is going to happen, but mostly I'm seeing their place. I'm seeing where they are at. I'm not necessarily taking it on myself, because if I did that, by the end of my day, I'd be so worn out, I wouldn't be any help. And I think what you said about giving to the universe, or giving to the people around you, or providing that help or that compassion, that not only gives you a sense of feeling good about yourself. We can build
Yeah.
something called resilience, which maybe
Yeah.
we'll talk about down the road someday, but will also help you with that sense of getting things reflected back. So I always look at empathy kind of like a mirror. And if you stare into a mirror long enough, you will see a reflection of yourself in some way, because there's something that is common about being human beings, and there's also something very unique about human beings, in the sense that if someone hurt their finger, they
Mhm.
might say, oh yes, I hurt my finger too, but you don't know exactly what it felt like for that person to hurt their finger in their way. And that's when the empathy starts. You don't have to necessarily wear somebody else's emotion. So I think it's very, very important when we're talking about empathy that people don't feel like you're just a sponge. Do you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going through a few years back. I was going through this phase where I was working on changing my own energy, and I was talking to different people, and I was trying to figure out, how do I change my energy? Maybe there are certain things which are these fear factors which are within me, perhaps from childhood, or perhaps somewhere along this journey of life, and these trigger factors which might end up where I'm attracting certain things again and again. And I wanted to change that energy. I wanted to remove that uh, those fear factors from my psyche. I've spent the past 5 years just trying to figure out, and I've constantly been working on changing my own energy. So I change, and I start so that I can attract what I really want, and I can manifest what I truly seek in life instead of what's coming. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, Saima, but let me try and unravel just a little bit of what you actually said there. And I think when we think of our energy, when we're born and we're just a little kid, we're born to be extremely selfish, if you will. We don't really care about anybody else but ourselves. We need food, we need our diaper changed, we need to be comforted, we need someone to hold us. These are very natural things. And when we get to be about 3, we begin to realize, wait a minute, there's other people here that we need to consider. By the time we reach about the age of 5, we realize that, there's rules that we have to pay attention to, and there's behaving well and there's behaving not so well. If we follow the rules, we'll be a good person. If we don't, maybe we won't be such a good person. So this happens gradually. And then over time, I think as we mature, we have to learn not only that we're not the center of all of the experiences that we have, we are participating in them. And then as we as we mature even more, we realize that this whole thing about giving and taking. And I think when we realize that giving is in fact taking, because when you're giving, you're growing yourself, you're growing a sense of kindness, you're growing a sense of compassion, you're definitely growing a sense of empathy. But you have to learn to take as well, right? Otherwise you're going to get depleted. So I think what we're describing here is that happy balance between being aware of what our needs are,
Mhm.
i.e., so that we can look after ourselves, and also how to give, and in such a way that strengthens our community, because we're all essentially part of a community. And when I talk about empathy, it's about realizing what our place is within that community. And when you're talking about my anxiety and my fears, might have attracted the wrong kind of energy from people. Who we are in the inside actually shows.
Excuse me.
Sorry, I'm talking while you're coughing. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Bless you. But who we are on the inside actually does show on the outside, because we spend so much energy trying to hide how we feel in the inside if we don't like how we feel, but it actually just kind of come out on the outside, and that's what people can sense. And I can talk about why in a moment, but maybe I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
So yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes we do hear. Okay, so that was very interesting. You were saying that what we feel on the inside reflects on the outside, and that you're able to. I do feel that our eyes are very expressive, and they, looking into someone's eyes can kind of give you there's this depth of not emotion, but when you look into someone's eyes, you're able to see so much of it's difficult for me to express, but you're able to see so much of that person if you look into someone's eyes. I think a person's eyes are extremely expressive, and they reflect this essence of who we are as an individual.
Well, I think what you're saying, from my perspective, Saima, is that when we look into someone's eye, because you can only look at one eye at a time, when you look at someone's eyes, you're kind of looking into their soul in a way.
Yes.
You're also looking at what they're looking at, because human beings can tell if someone is looking at something and their eyes avert to it, you can pinpoint exactly where they're looking. And it's interesting that we have that ability. We can tell where something is from our ears, but we can also tell where somebody else is looking by looking at their eyes. We can't tell where somebody else is listening because their ears are just stuck on the side of their head, but we can see where they're looking. Yeah. Therefore, we can look at someone's eyes and we can actually see the intent.
Yes.
So if someone's eyes show their intent, for example, if you and I were talking at where there's at a function, and I'm looking all around the room and I'm seeing everyone else who's there, you might be thinking, he's not even interested in talking to me. He's looking at everyone else but me. Yeah. And that might be very frustrating for you. Or you might be doing the same thing and we're actually just pretending to be interested in each other. So our eyes, we can tell where we're looking, but it's really interesting. We can tell where other people are looking. And the other thing about our eyes is that we have glands called the lacrimal ducts that make tears. And tears are terribly inconvenient because the moment we're making tears, we're either chopping onions or we're feeling something very intense.
Yeah.
And that's why we invented sunglasses, to hide our tears, right?
Yeah. Or look cool. But what the past few years of my own journey, as I've been evolving and growing, what it kind of taught me, Ashok, is that I myself, as I was discovering myself or was trying to evolve, I realized that I couldn't really be that sponge soaking in other people's emotions. That was something I just could not handle. In 2016, I started my women empowerment group. It's called Women of Noor, and it's on Facebook. And I have around 2,600 women in there.
Wow.
And when I started that group, and the group were, for me, that was like the perfect place, because it gave me that platform to share my feelings and to open myself up and to, create a space where I could show my true authentic self and post and do things based on who I am as a person. But it still gave me enough space where I was not in, direct contact, where I didn't have to soak other people's emotions internally. So that kind of worked out perfectly for me, because I knew that my own bandwidth was limited when it came to, how much am I able to take in emotions. But as I went on that journey, it gave me enough uh, exposure to other people, where I started growing, because it was knowledge, and it was education, and it was growth.
Well, I kind of have a swimming pool analogy to help maybe what we're talking about here. If someone is feeling upset or distressed or depressed or anxious, and there's a swimming pool in the backyard, if they jump into the swimming pool, you have to make sure that there's water in the pool. You have to make sure.
Yeah.
If there's no water in the pool, you're just jumping into concrete. It's not going to be a good day. So when we fill that pool with water, it's the same thing as filling that pool with people. People who have maybe similar issues or some of the same issues, and those people in there will cushion your jump. So once you jump into that water, it's safe. Yeah, you'll make a splash, but the people there will be able to cushion your fall. And also, if you know how to swim, then it's a safe place to be. And I think that group therapy or any kind of group situation can be much more powerful than maybe speaking to one person, which is also very helpful too, because it sets the idea that there's many people who have similar feelings.
Yeah.
And when people have similar feelings, it validates how they feel.
Yeah.
So if you can tell yourself, how I'm feeling is okay. How I'm feeling may not be comfortable, but it's okay. Then you can work through that feeling. If you think my feeling is not okay and it's not comfortable and I can't share that with anybody, then it gets kind of stuffed up inside you and you can't get it out, so you can begin to resolve that feeling. And that's why what you're doing is so powerful and so helpful to those people that you're sharing those experiences with.
And when we started the show, and I was sharing that with you, that when I took that a couple of months break, just to kind of regroup, and I discovered that, I told you that I had traveled to Pakistan in beginning first 2 weeks of April, over there meeting people, and I've just been meeting people, and they've just been coming up to me, and they've been talking about my podcast, and I'm like, oh, I mean, it just the feeling was just such a powerful feeling, because it's that point where you're like, okay, you were doing something, you were putting something into the universe, you were trying to throw some goodness out there. It started with it started as a soul searching process for myself when I started my podcast, and my own journey of trying to find answers for my own thoughts and my own feelings. But in the process, it started changing or helping other people. And so just over the past few months, and even when I was overseas, and people I was meeting, and they're like, you know what, we are loving it. And I'm like, oh, wow. Because it was not, my intention was not like, to get this gratification from appreciation from other people per se, but if it's impacting the lives of other people, then you're like, oh wow, you're doing something good, which is impacting people. And it's such a it just started changing my energy, and I think it was just fuel for my soul.
Well, it is fuel for your soul, Saima, because if you know that you're helping people, and if you know that other people are getting helped and that they're helping you, and they're also helping other people, so it begins to spread out, kind of like a pond becomes an ocean of help. Then it can make you feel so comfortable in your soul.
Yes.
So I've been helping people for over 35 years.
Yeah.
And then when I meet people like you who are just really kind of expanding the horizon of that, it's so amazing, because that's taking one message and
Yeah,
turning it into a mountain of information,
absolutely.
or an avalanche of information. And I think that something as simple as empathy,
Yeah,
and making it safe for people to share how they feel with each other, and the safety of that is what allows people to feel secure in themselves and begin to heal. Because you can't begin to heal unless you feel safe. Just like if you break a bone,
yeah,
you have to make it feel safe, and then it can heal. Same way with your soul and your heart. If that gets broken, you have to make it feel safe, and then it can begin to heal. And in human terms, safety happens when we have that sense of empathy and safety with other people. And that's why what you're doing is so important and powerful, because people are coming up and telling you, you made me feel safe. And maybe I made you feel safe too.
absolutely. And I think that's what it is, right? The you know, like I was saying earlier, that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and I think that's where those links are, where who's going to come in what capacity and impact your life in what capacity, and what mark are they going to leave in your life, right, in what capacity, and that is exactly what is going to determine if you're going to be a part of someone's life, for a small period or for a longer period, or it was just a one-time lesson that you were supposed to learn. And coming to the subject of empathy, Ashok, uh, how does empathy, why is empathy so necessary?
Empathy is necessary because human beings are not a lonely creature. There's very few animals in the world that live alone, like great white sharks live alone. You don't see large schools of great white sharks swimming around, thank gosh. Most creatures need each other, whether it's ants, or whether it's flocks of birds, or certainly human beings. So I have a number of skills, but there's many skills I completely lack. I'm terrible at lots of things, like how to fix a house. I can do the small things, but the big stuff, I got to call somebody. So I think we need empathy to sense that somebody else needs something. And we need empathy to sense that we can provide something to somebody else. So it brings the tribe together. If we had all the same skills, then we couldn't do that. But because we have different skills, we can come together. And we can come together in our intimate relationships. We can come together in our friendships. We can also come together in the workforce. So we need empathy to let each other know that I can help you with something and you can help me with something. It's one of the first steps in sensing each other's needs.
So, does it have to be mutually exclusive, which means that if I show empathy for someone else's needs, that I need to be able to receive that same empathy as well?
Well, I talk about reciprocal empathy in a book I wrote called Cake, and I think it's nice if empathy is reciprocated, but the
Uh-huh.
truth of the matter is that not everyone is empathic as everybody else. Some people have a little bit of empathy, some people have more, and some people actually have too much, and they have to learn how to have a little less so they can get on with what they need to do. It's nice when empathy there's a back and forth of empathy. That's nice. But if it's just one person, that can be a little boring after a while, or for the other person. And I kind of roughly break the world down into two types of people: givers and takers. And I'm pretty sure you're a giver. I'm a giver. But we all know people who just take. They don't believe in that reciprocal thing. So as long as givers and givers get together and we have an agreement to help each other out, I think most people are pretty calm with that. But I think it's not always reciprocal, and it's not always balanced that way.
What made you, you're a psychiatrist, and your focus is couples therapy, is couples, right? What made you focus on couples?
Well, I used to work in Toronto, which is a big city,
Mm-hmm.
and there were mostly singles there. And then 5 years later, back in 1995, I moved out to Oakville, which is a little town that's mostly married couples. And I noticed that the divorce rate in my town was close to 50%. In fact, it was unusual for couples to stay together. And I knew there was a problem when my kids came home from school when they were young and said, Mommy, Daddy, are you going to get a divorce? And I said, No, why? They said, Well, everyone else in school is getting a divorce. It was so common. And I started to worry, well, what is this? What's happening? Why are, good people coming together in good relationships, and then 5, 7, even 25 years later, they've drifted apart? Not everyone should stay in a relationship. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that wouldn't it be kind of great if we could learn how to be more empathic in our couple relationships? And so I began to offer a lot of help with couples. And what was beginning to happen is that couples would come to my office and they'd never really thought about being empathic with each other. They would say something like, we've had a breakdown in communication. I say, well, what does that mean? And as I began to kind of just take it apart and look further and further what was happening, they had literally drifted apart. They'd lost interest in who the other person was. And empathy starts with an interest in who the other person is. And that keeps going and going and unfolding for both people. So there's a balance with that as well. And things begin to change.
And you said I'm interrupting you.
Please do, anytime.
But you just said something so that couples lose interest in each other because they stop communicating with each other and they stop caring about the other person's needs.
Who the other person is, yes.
Right. So I think that is something that people start doing is you want the other person to listen to you and you want to be heard, right? But the other person might only want you to listen to them instead of listening to the other person.
Well, Saima, that's a very astute observation. I think what we see a lot of is that when people are talking, it's the same thing with our eyes. When I'm talking to people, I want their full attention. I'm very selfish when it comes to when I'm talking. And when people are talking, I want to give them my full attention. I don't want to be thinking about what I'm thinking about at all. I want to push all my thoughts out and I want to give them my full attention so that I don't miss a word that they're saying. And if they said in the middle of talking, like, what was I just saying? And I can't remember, then that to me, that's that I wasn't listening. Well, I'm not a perfect listener. I don't think anyone is unless there's something amazing about them. Listening is difficult. Talking is relatively easy. Listening is very difficult. And that's why I find that when I work with couples, the first thing I get them to do is to learn how to actively listen to each other. And that works.
How do you do that? How do you get couples to actively start listening to each other?
Little tiny bits at a time. So I'd say, okay, you say something. I'm feeling scared being in this office. Okay, what did your partner just say? They said they're feeling scared in the office. Okay, that's good. Now you say something. Okay, I don't feel so scared being in this office. Okay, what did your partner just say? And then we expand it to the point where maybe they're saying a whole paragraph. And you don't have to get exactly what your partner said. You have to get close to it. You have to understand it. And that's kind of cognitive empathy, where we're getting an understanding of the context of what somebody is saying. And the next thing I do is something called colorpathy, which is when I get them to try and identify their emotions.
And how do you do that?
I pick 4 colors, which are green, blue, red, and yellow. And green is glad, blue is sad, red is mad, and yellow is frad or afraid. And so it's glad, sad, mad, frad. And I teach them just to have those colors, and they get them to talk a little bit as to start and say, what color is your partner feeling right now? I don't know. Are they maybe they're feeling blue? And then their partner can answer and say, actually, I'm feeling kind of green right now. Okay. And what's your partner feeling? And they go back and forth. And after 20 minutes, they're actually about 80 to 95% correct on guessing each other's emotions. That's powerful. Because if they went from 50% almost guessing,
more empathy, right?
They're actually not thinking when their partner's talking, what emotion is my partner feeling right now? Because he's going to ask us. And then if they take that home and they practice that, then they're thinking, what emotion is my partner feeling? That's so much nicer than most fights when people say, you don't even know what I'm feeling. You know, or they say, you know, you didn't, I don't know what you said. It was the way you said it, which means the emotional way you said it.
So when you're working with couples, you're obviously working with them because they are at some point of some kind of disparity, some kind of, you know, they're already at that point in their marriage where they are feeling that they're feeling a void, and they are feeling, you know, that there's a lot of distance which has been created between them. So how do you work with couples? What advice what are you looking for in them, Ashok? What are those trigger points that you think that, okay, if I see these, that means that, you know, there's no hope for them, or you know, just share.
Well, I think that's a really good question, Saima. Thank you for asking it. But let me go back to how we started off this conversation. I'm not a sponge. And so if I sit there and I say, tell me all of the problems that you guys have had that led you to this, by the end of the meeting, I'm going to be, because I'm going to be completely crushed by it. What I usually do, and this is going to sound rude, okay? What I usually do is say, like, I'm sure you guys have been through a lot of stuff and a lot of problems, and I do listen to what's going on. But I generally make the assumption that they have forgotten how to relate to each other. And what I'm seeing now is the result of that. Whether it took them there, even if they've stepped out of the marriage, or they don't live with each other anymore, they're fighting all the time, I would say, we're here to help you learn how to relate to each other better. Whether you're planning to split or whether you're trying to come back together and reconcile, instead of finding out solutions to all the problems that you have, I'm going to retrain you how to be together in the first place. And so we can spend a lot of time talking about who gets what and resolving the issues that they've had in their fights. I have a very poor tolerance of couples fighting in front of me. I'll say, look, I grew up in a very angry house. There's lots of fighting going on. I can't handle it. But I'm really, really interested in helping you guys relate to each other. And what's really amazing is once I start teaching a couple how to relate to each other, again, sometimes for the first time, I have a window and I can often see them leave. I can just take a little peek out and see them leave. And it's really interesting if they come in separately, but they leave holding hands, planning to go to a coffee shop across the street and talk about things more. I know that they're now interested in each other again. They're curious about who they are. And, you know, there's a funny little fact about couples who break up and that have affairs with each other later on, even if they're married to other people, because they have a renewed interest in each other all over again. So I always assume that couples could have an affair with each other. They don't need to go outside of that relationship. They might be able to find that renewed interest in each other. Not always. You know, I have about an 80% success rate. That means 20% fail rate. But again, I'm not trying to fix all their problems.
80% is quite high.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And that's why I'm so excited about it. But I think that it's retraining maybe what they've never learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is that they've never learned?
How to empathize with each other properly. Have an interest in each other, ask the right questions, have a listening perspective when the other person's talking, ask a question from the heart. How are you? Instead of what did you do? How are you feeling today? You know, that's simple shift. And people like talking about their feelings. They like to talk about how they feel. Do they like to talk about, you know, how much things cost? Yeah, absolutely. But they like to talk about how they felt about what they spent for something even more, whether they got a good deal or if they didn't. So I think feelings are very important from an empathy perspective to begin to be curious about with each other. And when couples kind of drift apart a bit, what they often say is he just or she just lost interest in how I felt. They just weren't curious about how I felt. And like I said, about 80% of the time, if that renewed interest can happen, boom, you can have maybe another chance at a pretty good relationship.
Renewed interest.
Yeah.
Okay, but in order for renewed interest to happen, there must be something different that perhaps happens in an individual's life. No? Or you still stay within the same framework and you are still living the life that you have always been living, but there's something that changes in your life which piques the interest of your spouse.
Well, we have who we are on the outside,
Yeah.
and we have who we are on the inside. And I'm not a big wine drinker, but I've been to a wine tasting course.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to a wine tasting course, you're kind of looking at the wine, you're looking at the color of it, and you're smelling it and everything. And the person who's teaching the course can tell you what things to notice with your nose, your taste. And by the end of the course, you're smelling and tasting more. But it was the same wine you drank, last year, and you just thought it's just the wine. Nothing's changed in the wine. You just learned to appreciate more. You've actually learned to empathize more with the wine and use your senses to discover more. So next time you drink it, you say, there's all these flavors in there I wasn't even smelling before. And I think, or tasting before, and now I can appreciate more. I think, why not treat human beings like that? Why not have a wine tasting course for empathy? And that's what I do in my office. I get people just to show, well, you might be the same old boring couple you've been for the last 20 years. Yeah. Let's see if there's something new that you can appreciate. And when it works, it's magic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work. I'm not saying I'm not saying everyone should stay together. I'm not saying people shouldn't separate if they need to. Yeah. Absolutely, that happens too. I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that if you really want to give someone a good trial, maybe a trial of empathy can actually, at the very best, get you together. But if you need to be apart, it can help you to appreciate each other, especially if you got kids and you got a co-parent children and you're doing it separately. You can have more respect and civility for each other, which is so much easier on everybody.
It is. And how do we encourage that? How do we encourage people to be more respectful, even if you come to a point in your life where you feel that that maybe it's time for you to go separate ways? How do you do it with more respect and with more civility so that?
Well, this is where I'm mean as a therapist. Okay, you're going to get a little flavor of me not being so pleasant now. Sometimes if I'm working with a couple and they're really not getting along, I'll say, if your partner was in a car accident right now and they're at the hospital and we're not sure if they're going to make it, would you go? Oh yeah, I'd go right away. Well, why do you have to wait for a car accident to be concerned about your partner? Really? What's interesting, I'm fairly old, but as we get older, we get more interested in love and compassion for the universe. When we're younger, we have all these negative feelings, we have all this anger. But as you get older, I've worked with a lot of people who are dying, usually from cancer or some kind of terrible illness. And we never have conversations about hate. They have conversations about love, the things they're going to miss, something as simple as the moon at night or the sunset, the people that they're going to miss. Interestingly, when things seem close to the end, love is so much easier.
It is, because it's an easier, happier emotion.
Well, that's how you want to go. You want to go with love, as opposed to hate or disrespect. So I'm a bit mean this way in my couple sessions, and I'll say that love is a way more powerful emotion than hate. And you don't have to like each other, but you can have respect and have love for maybe the memory of the relationship we've had, even if couples are not getting along. They can sometimes change that feeling, that tone, from being contemptuous or resentful to at least respectful. That's what I do, and that works about 80% of the time.
What should, since it seems like we have geared a bit more towards this relationship and couples, and so what exactly should couples, or if anyone is watching and they want to bring a spark to their relationship or to their marriage again, what exactly sure are those facts or things that two people should keep on the forefront of their relationship so that there's always love and respect and there's the spark is always there?
Well, I think people are fantastic. And I don't mean that just literally. People are capable of fantasy.
Yes.
And when we think of things being fantastic, we're adding our fantasy of what that is. And because human beings are full of fantasies about what we would like to happen to our life, what would like to happen to our relationships, the things we'd like to do, the people we'd like to meet, we're always fantasizing. And I think if I'm working with a couple, I say be each other's fantasy and fantasize about each other. And tell each other what fantasy you'd like to have. Share that with each other. I'm not just talking about sexual fantasies. I'm talking about sensual or romantic or travel fantasies or things to do together fantasies or experiences. Yeah. My wife and I are travelers, so she's got so many places she's want to go. I hope I can get at all of them. But it's about sharing that inner world of fantasy. Once you feel safe to share your inner world with your partner, there's a never-ending exploration of things to do and talk about and learn about each other. If you just have the domestics of who's picking up the kids today, who's cooking supper tonight, did we get the laundry done? That stuff is necessary. Those are domestics. There's no fantasy in that, right? That just kills fantasy altogether. So one of the things I tell couples to do is to get a book. Just get a book, and this is my book, by the way, and they just read it. Just read it. Maybe read a chapter to one, and the next another one read the chapter, and you read it aloud to each other. So you're reading a book together. But you're sharing something new, like just getting any book you want. I mean, we all watch movies together, but imagine you're lying in bed and your partner's reading you a chapter. Kids love to be read to. So do adults. And it might only take like 20 minutes just before you go to bed, but it's something different, but it's about sharing that fantasy with each other. I have tons of simple ideas like that, but I encourage couples to think of things like that to do as well, that can make their relationship have fantasy again. That's one of the key issues I think that we're talking about.
Because it just seems like you reach a point, especially when you get married, in your early 20s and you reach, kids happen, and the financial struggles and the adjustments and the education, and you're trying to grow together, but you might reach a point where you end up living parallel lives. And when you're living the parallel lives, you are just moving forward. You're not complementing each other anymore. Like you said, you just start growing distant and more distant, and you just start living parallel lives.
Well, let me give you a hint, and I'm sure some people will be offended what I'm going to say next, but here we go. Women love to be told that they're cherished, that their partner cherishes them, and men love to be told that they're respected. So how many women tell their wives, I really respect you? And how many men tell their wives, I really cherish you? That simple statement, if you said that, not kind of every day as if you've got to, but when something comes up and you could say that, I mean, men like to be told they're cherished and women like to be told they're respected too, absolutely. But can you imagine how nice it would be if you were told that you're loved and cherished when there's a reason to, and there's always a reason to. I think my wife complains I tell her I love her too much, but I think she needs to know this all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I always look at marriage as a prison, because you're stuck with that person for the rest of your life. You better get along with them. You better get along with them. Otherwise, you're going to spend your time fantasizing about how do I get out of this prison instead of how to enjoy this time with this person that I'm married to. And I'm a fan of marriage, and I don't think everyone's suited for marriage. But I think that can we make the best of a great idea, which is to share your life and your soul with somebody? I think we can. And that's one of the things, that's why I spend so much time with couples. And maybe I'm very optimistic, but I think it's interesting to see people change right in front of you.
I bet it is. How do you see that? That change must be really magical, right?
It's exactly the same as what you were describing earlier, when someone you've never met comes up to you and says, Saima, your podcast has changed my life.
Yeah.
Your podcast makes me feel safe. It makes me feel safe with the feelings I had. And you gave me a community of safety and conversation that I can share how I feel. So it's that powerful feeling of doing good, of watching a couple who maybe came in hating each other, maybe fighting up the stairs when they come into my office, and they leave hugging each other, crying, saying, I'm so sorry. Why can't we do this every day? And I say, as they're leaving, I said, guys, you can practice this every single day. This is your new normal. This is your new high watermark of how you can be with each other. Really? Yes. Practice it.
So, Ashok, what advice would you give couples? Should they seek a marriage counselor, someone who can lay out some of those rules and tips and that these are the essentials, and make sure you keep these essentials to the forefront? Don't maybe print out these what's that book called, like 21 rules of love or something?
Well, I think that, including mine, there's lots of self-help books that I think are very, very useful. But I would tell a couple who are starting out in their relationship, especially the first couple of years, look, you're very excited, you're very happy, you're very in love, you're very attracted to each other. This is going to change. No, it won't. No, it won't. Yes, it will. It should change. Your relationship is going to not be a sparkler, that little thing that goes out. It's going to turn into a fire. Keep wood on the fire. Keep it burning. And you keep wood on that fire by making sure that you ask good questions of each other. Ask how you feel. Share how you feel. Share fantasies you have. Share stories with each other. My wife and I have been doing this for years. Check in with each other. Every day. You don't have to do it every day. Maybe at least once a week. Have a committee meeting. Every good business does that. Where are we going? What's the direction? What are we doing next? What's the agendas? What are the chores we need to do? What do we need to do next as a couple? And that way, you kind of stay on track through this course. And it's with couples, sometimes they veer apart a little bit. They come back together. This happens normally. And anything that grows is not going to grow exactly together all the time. So the goal isn't to stick together like glue. The goal is to appreciate the direction that your partner's going in. And I call this directional empathy. And I even have an exercise for it. We may not have time to discuss that today. But directional empathy is really important. And that it simply means appreciating the direction that your partner's going in. If your partner's going this way, you might need to follow them, or you might not need to. And when I watch that big ball of birds flying in the air, and they don't bang into each other, right? You've got 1,000 birds all flying in a big ball. Why don't they bang into each other? Human beings would bang into each other all the time. It's really important to be aware of the emotional direction that your partner's going in. And that's why I think that check-in is really, really important. Not just with what are we doing today, but what direction do you want our lives to go in? And a lot of couples have trouble with, I want to go do this. I want to go do that. Sometimes they can do that separately, but the strength is, can they do that together? And I think, to me, practicing that makes the relationship a lot stronger. It also makes the couple more resilient. And that means they can tolerate things when things inevitably in life happen to them.
And which do happen, and which is something you always have to be prepared for. But I think one of the biggest problems probably is when you're just walking in separate directions and your vision is not in sync with each other. So you're living parallel lives, and then one day you reach that point where you're just not glued together anymore. So you have different visions, you have different paths, and you just keep, drifting further apart.
Well, I think, marriage is not normal,
Yeah.
right? We're not really
It's very
supposed to.
difficult.
We're not really supposed to be stuck to one person for 50 or 60 years. It's very hard.
yeah.
That's why people have trouble doing it. But what I'm suggesting is friendship, for example. People often have friends for life.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say that we should get rid of friendship, or that some of our friends come and go, but we have some friends for our entire life.
Yeah.
People that we would do anything for. They're our friends. And that's why I think a really important ingredient in marriage is not love, it's friendship.
Yeah.
And I always tell people when they're dating, for example, do you love him? Do you love her? Oh, yeah, we're crazy. Do you like them? I don't know. But do you love them? Yeah, crazy about them. Do you like them? I don't know. And what a lot of couples say is, I still love my partner. I just don't like them anymore. Because they never worked on their friendship. And this is so key when couples are getting together for long-term relationships, is work on your friendship. Because that's what's going to drift apart.
That's very interesting. Work on your friendship. Focus on, building your friendship with your spouse. And I think I think that right there is something really key. It's a key element of that. That the bond and the relationship, and I think that's where people start drifting apart.
Absolutely, Saima. Absolutely, bang on.
Yeah, I mean, the love is there, but you just don't want to be there with each other anymore.
And this is normal. I try to. If couples come to see me, I don't shame them. I don't make them feel bad. I'm proud that they've come. I'm proud they've chosen me to help them with what I can. I don't promise anything, but ultimately what I do, I train them how to be more empathic with each other. And when you, again, as we said, when we see that happen, it changes their world. They see each other differently, and sometimes they completely rediscover a friendship that they never really looked at. And once they find that, they don't have to be best friends, but they can be good friends with each other. And people will always go out of the way for a good friend.
Any other advice for couples? What about youngsters who are about to get married or who are thinking about considering marriage?
Well, I'm a long range plan person, and so I would say if I was counseling a couple in their 20s, for example, I would say it would be really useful to sit down on a piece of paper and write down your long-range plans, maybe to 50. And they don't have to work out, or just what you say, and then give it to your partner and read it, and we'll talk about what things were on there that was similar and what things that were different. Because your long-range plans is where you're going to end up. Your short-range plans, they're going to happen over the next 6 months to a year. Your long-range plans is where this relationship is going to end up, and they're either going to be, as you say, aligned with each other, or they're going to be drifting apart. And it's really, really cool when you see, especially young couples who are very idealistic about their relationship, that when they look at long-range plans, they begin to realize, oh yeah, my parents did that, my grandparents did that. And if we have some long-range plans that align with each other's core values, that might help a lot. And so it depends what you're looking through. If you're looking through a microscope, you can fix the problem. If you're looking through a telescope, you can fix the problem as well, because then you can see where land is on the ocean.
It gives you a broader perspective of the person who you're getting married to.
Exactly.
It's just... because Ashok, we also tend to, we see the other person from our perspective. We hear things from our perspective. We also tend to sometimes just ignore and disregard the negative aspect of things and maybe just move forward. We tend to perhaps glorify our memories too, right?
Well, we glorify everything because it's called fantasy.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes fantasy is, oh boy, I can't wait to do this. Or fantasy is, I remember when this happened and it wasn't fantastic at all. But in our memory, we turned it into this incredible thing. So we're always having to compete with fantasy. because reality is not fantasy. And so sometimes when you're just with your partner thinking, I stuck with this person again, and it's not fantastic, we all want things to be fantastic. And you think, well, it would be more fantastic if, and that's where some couples can drift apart. So that's why it's important to share your fantasies with each other where possible. And that you don't have to have all the same fantasies, but you just need a few, and that can really bond a couple again.
Time always flies, and when you're having fun, and we didn't get a chance to really go into and talk more about PTSD, which is another one of your focus, or even your music, for that matter, because I know you love music and you write music, and do you compose songs as well? Okay, your own music. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I do.
Well, how about this? Next time we come on, what do you play, the guitar, or what do you do? Do
I sing and I play the guitar and I play bass and I can play keyboards a little bit, and I don't play drums. That's the only thing I don't do.
Okay, so next time we come on, how about you sing for the listeners? You play something on your guitar and you.
We'll think about that. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm happy to talk about PTSD, because I think that's what Nancy was really focused on as well, and I think that's such an important area. And it's really good that we talked about couples.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a big issue, and empathy really is a big issue in all these areas. So whether they talk about PTSD or couples, it's really a very similar conversation. That's the beauty of empathy, because it really is just one thing. And once people get that empathy is doable by most of us, most of us can improve our empathy skills, just like that wine tasting course I told you about early on. It can fix a lot of problems that are empathy bound, like PTSD as well.
And a lot of these things have to do with mental health.
It all does. A lot of couples' relationships are in trouble because they don't appreciate what their partner's going through. And it could be anything from just sadness or loss of fantasy in the relationship, right to depression and crippling anxiety, or even trauma.
Because none of this is visible to the naked eye.
It's not visible to the naked eye unless you're looking for it. And a lot of people hide. They hide how they feel.
Yeah.
And they might cover their eyes, as we talked about earlier on. And they might be with their friends, and their friends might say, "How's everything going?" And that they might say to the friends, "Everything is great. It's fine." And then 6 months later, they're looking for a new house because their marriage has fallen apart. So I think this happens to many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ashok, we will go ahead and we will, it's 5 o'clock, and we've been talking and learning and listening and enhancing ourself and our own growth for an hour. So, friends, thank you all for being here and for watching. And I'm so appreciative of, whoever sends me a message, or every one of you who I meet, and you express that there's some things that you benefit from the podcast. I'm so appreciative of that. And you know what? We touch lives together, and I cannot do it without your help. So thank you for watching, and thank you for being here. And we will have Ashok back here, and we will talk more about different things. So thank you for watching.